Chapter 3.2, the Prehistoric and Ancient Mediterranean. We're going to head east a little bit into Mesopotamia, modern-day Iraq. Before we do that, because we're going to talk about the Fertile Crescent, I'm just going to show you a quick diagram, a quick listing of the Holocene and the Little Ice Age and so on, how overall where the weather has changed. We had an ice age, mini ice age, that lasted a few hundred years in 8000 BC, and we had that Bering Strait migration from Tibet and China into the New World, the North and South America, bringing in Native Americans. But down here, we start to see migrations out of North Africa to east and north. And then the Holocene, the warm period, it starts to become warmer at this time. So what we're looking at when we go back and we look at our pieces here and our time period here in our PowerPoint, the Fertile Crescent that we're talking about in Mesopotamia, which is modern-day Iraq, was much greener, not to be confused with the Industrial Revolution. Let me do one more time over here. The Industrial Revolution down here, the Industrial Age causing global warming, that's slightly different. The last 100 and some years have been warming much more, and there's been different warming trends. But when we go back here, we had a much greener area in Iraq and Iran. And in Iraq, also because of those two rivers, Tigris and Euphrates, some of that was flooded and swampy, even into recent times. And now a lot of that was drained, and it exacerbated the desert issue in Iraq even further. But I don't want to get too far afield, but I just want you to understand that when you look at images of Iraq and you see these civilizations, and in some areas of Persia too, it looks a dry wasteland. There was a good deal of farming going on, quite a few thousand years ago. So we're going to look at a few different cultures down here. Sumerians are first great power in Mesopotamia. So they have the cuneiform writing. This is our first writing here that we know about. So it's wedge-shaped symbols, and we don't show it in the book in this segment, but it's sort of written into wet clay, and this was the writing that the first time we had some kind of writing. It says invented the wheel, which is possible. We don't know for sure. One of the things is, and you're going to see a wood piece shortly, that if the wheel was carved out of wood will not last 4,000 years. The oldest piece of wood that we have in terms of an artifact or a piece of art is from an Egyptian tomb. And because of the tomb culture and the burial culture, in Egypt, a lot of things were preserved, but that is unusual. It's a polytheistic religion, and they buried treasure with their leaders. Now, that is part of the reason we still have anything at all from the Sumerians. Now, this is the standard of Ur. Standard means like a banner. And so we don't know for sure if that's exactly what this is, but usually banners or standards are things that people in a crowd or a procession or a parade would be holding up on a stick, but there's not really strong evidence of this, but I think that is what it was believed to be when it was found. And our standard of Ur here has two sides that we're seeing here. And this was found in the Royal Cemetery of Ur. It was first discovered, and they thought that it was a standard, but there's no evidence. I'm reading from the book on this part. But it's a wooden box. It's 8 inches high, decorated with shell, lapis lazuli, and red limestone. One side of the box shows war scenes, while the other shows life during the times of peace. So that's page 370. So one thing that is demonstrated here are our registers, are these lines right here. It's kind of similar to modern day comic books where we put things in a panel in an area, right? Information. And this is hierarchical scale. Now, hierarchical scale is two main things. One is the registers or placement, the important figure here is going to be on the top register, the less important people on the bottom. In this, you see it a little bit more clearly where these are sort of peasants carrying things, I believe. There's one with slaves. The bottom register of the war side shows chariots running over the bodies of the enemy. Okay, so this is the war one. So the bodies are running over the the soldiers are here. Soldiers are here running over the bodies of the enemies, and then the ruler would be up here. We don't know whether he was religious or or just a religious leader, or just thinking he was king, political leader. We don't know. But anyway, he's up top, and so he's going to be on the top register. Medium importance, less importance. Okay? That's part one of hierarchical scale. Hierarchical scale is also that the most important figure is largest. The hierarchy is shown with the levels. You even hear that, like a flowchart or levels, different level, right? That's referring to where they are in the strata. So this is the bottom strata, middle strata, top strata. Registers are our lines. And our figure, who's the most important person, our ruler, is largest. So size, relative size, and placement. Okay? So it's narrative art. We have a war side and a peace side, banquet with musicians. Okay, so we're going to get into also a Sumerian, sorry, I had to backtrack for a second, I lost my train of thought. Sumerian lyre, which is like the precursor to the guitar. The lyre, it stays around for a long time. This is a very ancient instrument. It's still around today, but more like in a historical sort of amusement context. So we have this 4,000 plus year old piece, and wood, lapis lazuli again. So that's blue stone, by the way. I'll back up here. That's what this blue stone is here, the lapis. Used in jewelry still today. Gold, silver, shell, bitumen, and this is a modern wood support. Now remember what I said about the Egyptians having their chair that survived that's almost this old. I don't know the year off the top of my head. We'll have to look into that. But they replaced this wood. They might have had some crumbling tiny bits or some residue telling us it was wood, but the inlay probably survived because it's stone, and maybe these pieces here made of some other kind of metal. So those things will last, but wood will not last that long. So this is an instrument, and it survived because it was in a grave, the king's grave. So it's very popular. So it's similar to a harp, and it was found in the cemetery, but it's also a lute. I'm sorry, a lute is the guitar. I got my things mixed up. I beg your pardon. A lyre is the harp, lute is a guitar, and it was reconstructed. Okay, so here's our detail of the artwork. We're looking right here. Getting a little distracted. My allergies bugging me. I apologize. Okay, so we have some mythological figures here. Not really sure too much on the detail of them. This one looks quite Egyptian. If you look at our side stance of our legs, the profile stance, if you look at that, and it could be a connection to some kind of Egyptian religion, but we don't know much about the Sumerians. A fusion of humans and beasts, we've seen that in Egyptian imagery. Okay, the Akkadians they conquered the Sumerians, and King Sargon is founding this empire. So the rulers elevated themselves to divine status, and we have this bronze piece which is damaged, and this is 15 inches. It's kind of life size. But it was to connect the ruler to the divine. And we don't know if the eyes were gouged out because there was lapis and different stones that a looter pulled out of the gravesite, or where it was found, or if it was to make it less powerful, like the next people that took over would gouge his eye out to make him less powerful. We're not sure. So ancient thieves, that's all that's a guess, right? So it was looted in 2003, but it has since been returned. Right now, a lot of controversy and a lot of upset because in Iran and Iraq, there's a lot of terrorism, but there's also a lot of conflict over ancient religions that are not Islamic. So they've some ancient Buddhas that are 2,000 years old were blown up. Um, some of these sites have, like the National Museum was broken into. I mean, there's been numerous things they've been posted on YouTube. Very sad, just desecrating these ancient treasures that later, maybe even the same people, once this sort of time passes, would really be upset that they did what they did. But there's just a lot of stuff going on right now, and things are getting destroyed in the Middle East. We're our cradle of civilization. There's so much stuff that's important art historically there. And I don't mean to say that human life is not important. It absolutely is. It's just that, this is more of what our subject matter is here, is the artifacts. Okay, the Assyrians come in, and slave labor is used to build the large city of Nimrud near modern Mosul, Iraq. So we're still in the same area. So these different cultures, these different rulers just layer on top of each other. They come in one after another. The palace is